What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Today we have on the number one Joe Burrow lookalike himself, Jackson Powers. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Today it's going to be more of a draft preview episode and more going into the quarterback side of the draft, as there are pretty much five guys who you could say headline this quarterback class for the 2023 NFL draft. Those guys being Bryce Young out of Alabama, CJ Stroud out of Ohio State, Will Levis out of Kentucky, Anthony Richardson out of Florida, and Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. So, first look at these five guys in this quarterback class in general. What are your thoughts on the strengths and weaknesses of this class?
Right now, first things first, far and away better than last year's class, because
Yes,
last year we
100%.
didn't really have any true studs. And I think if you look at the top three guys, which in my opinion are Young, Stroud, and Levis, any of those guys would be far and away better than any of the ones last year. I think that especially when you look at the projects, there were a couple of projects in last year's class. They had a much lower floor than you usually see. Whereas like the ones in this year's class, like Levis and Anderson, I think are already miles ahead in terms of how pro ready they are. So I think that it's safer. And I think that it's a lot deeper. I think all in all, much better than last year's class. But I'm not sure that there's anyone where I'm thinking like this guy is guaranteed to be an absolute star in the league. And like we'll go into it more bit by bit once we actually get into the teeth of these guys, but certainly an upgrade from last year. But I'm not saying that this is necessarily some like incredible class. I would say it's a little bit closer to the average that we usually see, but certainly an upgrade.
Yeah, I definitely say so. I think this class, it has great guys like Bryce Young, CJ Stroud are probably the consensus, or the majority have those two guys being the top two quarterbacks in this class. You could maybe argue the case for Levis, but back to the point, Young and Stroud, they are like two headliners. I would say at one point in the season, you would think that they could go maybe 1 and 2. Now we'll get into Stroud in a little bit, but Stroud maybe has fallen off a little bit. But I really want to start things off with Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama, started with the plane, but he's pretty much the consensus number one quarterback in this draft. Do you agree with that?
I do, and that's for a couple of reasons. The first one is that I think he is the best guy in this class at playing out of structure. When you look at this Alabama roster, it's far worse than any of the powerhouse Alabama teams that we've seen in these last couple of years, and that we've just gotten used to seeing Saban just leading these number 1, number 2 ranked team in the countries. This is the first year that I can remember that they missed the college football playoffs. So this certainly is not like this incredible unit that we've used to seeing out of them. But Young has prevailed. He really looks incredible, and I think he does a really good job of creating even when the surrounding members of his team aren't great, which is why he's going to be a great fit with Houston when they eventually draft him. But I also think he's probably the smartest quarterback in this class. There's not a lot of guys that I feel very comfortable in terms of how well they can break down a coverage pre-snap or how well they can react to the blitz. Young does a really good job of that. But my favorite trait about him is when he's entered scramble drill, the thing that he can best do is that he can keep his eyes downfield while he is moving outside of the pocket, and it makes him really susceptible to be able to make big plays at a very consistent basis. So Young is my quarterback one. There's certainly some concerns that I have with him, but that's the positives, and I think that he easily projects to be the number 1 overall pick right now.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to see him next year in a Houston uniform for sure. One of my biggest positives out of Bryce Young is his ability to create, which not a lot of the quarterbacks in this class have, CJ Stroud being one of them. But Bryce Young's ability to create, and we're seeing that more and more in the NFL, where this creation and this improvising that some quarterbacks have is a huge trait in what NFL teams look for. We look at Patrick Mahomes, we look at Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, what they can do when the play breaks down and what they are able to do, and to direct their wide receivers around the field and scramble out and stuff is something that is a big strength that I see out of Bryce Young as well. So yeah. Another thing, though, weakness that you could probably say, and one of the biggest things that you look at when you look at Bryce Young, one of the biggest weaknesses that definitely stick out is his height. He's listed at 6 foot on the Alabama website, but I think he's more like 5'10", 5'11", Kyler Murray height. What do you think this is going to be a disadvantage seeing across the middle of the field for him in the NFL?
I do to an extent, but I don't think so as much as like we see it with like the other short quarterbacks in the league where like Kyler and
Mhm.
Russ are like really short. Young's done a better job at throwing over the middle these past few seasons at Alabama than they ever have. So I don't think that it's like that's being taken away from them as much. My bigger
Mhm.
concern is he someone that's going to avoid injury? Because not only is he really short, he's really thin as well. Where like Russ and Kyler, if you just like Google search images of them, they
They're
are
built.
built. They're
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 built.
ripped,
Hmm.
and yeah, they have a lot more like
Yeah.
muscle mass to their body. Whereas Bryce Young's arms, like you can just see, are clearly not that. They don't have that same kind of like size on them. So is he
Hmm.
going to be someone that can avoid hits at a high level? Because if he's not, injury risk is definitely a factor for him.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I think that the size is concerning, but I don't think it's with as much as like are there going to be areas of the field taken away from him? Because we've seen that with Russ. Like that's a huge reason as to why Russ Wilson's having a horrible season with the Broncos is because like
Yeah.
there's not many areas. You don't have to take away the whole field like you do with some other quarterbacks. It's like if you take away his hot zones, which are those deep moon balls along the sideline and anything in the short levels, leave the middle of the field open. That issue is going to kind of take care of itself. So I don't think that Young is going to have that same issue, but
Mhm.
there are certainly concerns that I have with his height.
Yeah, and going back to the injury thing, the Houston offensive line is not that great ranking. I mean, they have Larry Tunsil, Kenyon Green, the first round pick rookie, has not been very impressive so far this season. We'll see if he can make like a sophomore league next year. But that right side of the line isn't great either. Filled with a lot of older veteran guys that are probably going to retire within the next few years. So I that also gives me some worry about Bryce Young, as he's probably going to head to a team with a bad offensive line. Uh, so yeah, that is also it. Moving on here to C.J. Stroud, the Ohio State quarterback. Would you say his stock has definitely fallen this year, or do you think this is just more of a narrative that started up that isn't really true?
I think it's fallen for sure, and part of the reason for that is because obviously there's the stigma around Ohio State quarterbacks and how they just don't always translate super well to the NFL. But the difference between him and a lot of other quarterbacks that we've seen come out early in other years is that he is not as good at playing outside of structure, and I
Hmm.
think he is someone who relies a lot more on that Ohio State offense and what's around him more so than some of the other guys like Fields who came out. Like Fields can consistently make plays on his legs and can move outside of the pocket really well. Stroud doesn't really have that kind of ability, but there are other benefits with him. I think that like one of the main issues with Ohio State quarterbacks is they're not very good with pressure once they get to the
Yeah,
NFL level. And if you look at what's his Fields
yeah.
and Stroud's sack percentage, Stroud's is about half that, despite the fact that he's not nearly as threatening as an escape artist. But I think if you can get him to a team with a good surrounding cast, like I think the Lions make sense for him right now. If they decide that Goff is not going to be the guy, I think that if Stroud gets plugged into that Detroit offense, it's going to be really nice because it's almost going to be like Goff. If Goff could hit like 30% more throws, if you just, it's like in a video game when you like level someone up and they like unlock more stuff. That's kind of how I feel about him. Is like if
Hmm.
he gets plugged into Detroit, it's going to be like if Goff unlocked like 30% of the field that he is not able to hit right now. He's just kind of an
Hmm.
upgraded version of that. I don't think that the Panthers would be a bad fit because I don't like the receivers right now. But that's something that can change really easily because receivers are
Yeah,
just super easy to find. And that offensive line is definitely legit over there. So I
hmm,
don't think that this is going to be. I don't think Stroud's ever going to be some star.
yeah.
But
I agree with that.
if you can get him on the right team where there's like a legit supporting cast and a coaching staff who seems competent, I
Hmm.
think that he will at least succeed to a level where he can have a decently long NFL career.
Yeah, I agree with that. With if we, again, we look at Bryce Young, we see the creation ability. That's not really there with CJ Stroud, and that's something that worries me. And it makes me feel like his ceiling is probably a guy like that in that Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill range, where they can manage the team very well. They probably won't make that many mistakes, but they're still not. They're not in that next tier of guys where you look at like Kyler Murray probably and you know what I mean, the
Yeah,
next
yeah,
into that
exactly.
next tier of players. Also, I think the Lions actually, I don't know if it was Dan Campbell or someone else who said it. I saw this report. It was like they're not opposed to starting Jared Goff in 2023
Yeah,
and
yeah, I
rolling
think I
with him.
saw that.
I don't I don't really know how I feel about that.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me
yeah.
because, like, they're obviously trying to do this, like, complete, full, total rebuild and
Mhm.
fill in the quarterback spot last, and there's some spots on the defense that clearly need to be replaced, so I wouldn't hate it if they wanna wait 1 more year, but you can't go too much longer with Goff.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Again, yeah, we talked about the auto structure stuff. Do you think we've seen it with Fields in the past as well? These Ohio State wide receivers, one of the, I mean, the Ohio State's really wide receiver you over there. So, do you think that definitely he benefits more from that than other Ohio State quarterbacks in the past, or do you think he's probably less like the wide? He's still pretty good, even if he didn't have those wide receivers.
I think that he benefits not in the sense that they're making him better, but in the sense that he is someone who requires a lot of trust in his receivers, where like some of the throws that he will attempt are insane and he hits them at a decently high clip. And obviously, it's because his receivers are great. But if we're going to have a quarterback like this who can stay in the pocket for a little bit, take a shot, and then just hit some like dime on a crossing route or on a corner route that we've seen him hit so many times this season, your receivers are going to have to be good. And I think his play style would change a little bit if they weren't, but I don't think that they are carrying him in the sense that
Mhm.
we've seen other Ohio State quarterbacks come out where it's like they are not accurate. Their receivers just have a massive catch radius. I don't think that's the case as much with Stroud. I think it's just they need to be good in order for him
Mm.
to have the trust to throw the balls that he does. But regardless, he still can hit some incredibly tight window throws. And we'll see how much he's really attempting that in the NFL, depending on what team he goes to. But I think that the good receivers certainly play a role in how he plays his game.
Yeah, I agree with that. Where would you see him landing in the 2023 NFL draft in terms of range? Do you think he's a top five? He's going to land in the top five pick, and do you think he's worth a top five pick or a top 10 pick in this draft?
My guess is that he does land in the top 5 just because there's so many quarterback hungry teams with so few legit
Mhm.
solutions. So, my guess right now is that the top 5 is going to be like Houston, obviously number 1. I think Chicago will be in there somewhere. I think Seattle will have their pick from Denver in there
Yeah.
somewhere. But then once you get to the like Carolina, Detroit, I bet he goes to one of those 2 teams because
Mhm.
obviously Young won't be there. And I think once you can get him to a roster where there's like structure, then that's where he's best going to fit. But if one of those 2 teams likes him, like I've heard some dialogue about possibly trading back, but I don't think you really do that with a quarterback cuz like if you have pick number 4 or 5 and you like them, even if
Mhm.
they're like a top 30 player or something on your board, you take them there just because there's always that positional value boost for quarterbacks
Yeah.
where it's like if you like them, you take them no matter what pick you have in the first round. So I don't
Mhm.
think he's necessarily a top 5 player in this class, but I bet he ends up as a top 5 pick or just outside of it.
Yeah, I think we could really see a team again. The Panthers and the Lions, I think, are the two big contenders for Stroud, and I really think we could see one of those jump the other and into the top three, four, five, maybe depending on where the Bears pick, because the Bears aren't going to pick a quarterback. The Seahawks in the top five will probably not pick a quarterback as well, and then the case maybe the Eagles get into the top five as well, which I think they are in the top five right now because they have the Saints pick in that trade from last year. So I definitely think we could see a team trade up into that top five to grab CJ Stroud. All right, let's move on to the third quarterback on the list, Will Levis out of Kentucky. First, what were your first impressions when you first saw Will Levis?
I actually started my scouting report of him today. So I made a little like so my strengths and weaknesses for him. So the strengths I have for him right now, obviously the size. He's massive, and
Huge.
like when he gets into the running game, he can legitimately like break tackles to a level that most quarterbacks can't. The arm strength is clearly there.
Yep.
Uh, and I do think that he is more pro ready than people will give him credit for because, like, don't get me wrong, he's certainly a project and not someone that I project to be very good year one. But he's got some mental tools to him for sure. I think he does a really good job of knowing when to throw it away. And that's something you really like to see because sometimes like one of his concerns this year is that he plays a little bit too much hero ball because this Kentucky squad is just
Yep.
not nearly. Yeah, he's got that Sam Howell effect to him, where like the Kentucky squad is not, it's not nearly as good as it was last year, and he's trying to, he's got to be the one to make some plays, and I don't think that weakness is as big of a factor as some people have made it out to be. So he knows when to throw it away. He's not very good at diagnosing coverages pre-snap, but he can diagnose a blitz really well, and he knows how to react to it. He can move through his reads really quickly when he knows there's a blitz, and will get the ball out quickly when he's actually anticipating that pressure. But when he's not, it's a completely different story. He's really susceptible to hits on the blind side. I've noticed that a lot. He can kind of see what pressure is going to look like pre-snap, but if that folds, like I saw sometimes there's like a guy who gets beat pretty quickly, it is instantly in his blind side, and he takes more blind side hits than I think are than is regular at all.
Yeah.
His footwork is my main concern with him, especially when he like if they rush a 4-man look and one of the offensive linemen gets beat and he faces pressure, you see him like backpedaling a lot or like throwing off his back foot. He doesn't really know how to react with pressure in his face. And obviously the accuracy is pretty spotty. Not awful, but not consistent enough to where you would be like, this guy could be plugged in immediately to an NFL offense and he would succeed. So I think it's someone who's going to need a little bit of time on the bench. But right now, I would not be surprised if he's picked in that top 10 range. I think where I would best like him to go is somewhere where it's like these back end potential playoff teams where I think maybe if the Lions don't take a quarterback with their first pick, if he's able to fall to that back end range where there's a small chance that they sneak into the playoffs. But that back end, like just outside the top 10 towards like the mid 20s, anywhere in that range, I think that would make sense for him because it gives him a good cast that he can jump into and kind of learn without any real expectations immediately. So that's what I think about Levis. I have a so I think right now I have like an early first, late second round grade on him.
That's what
But
I
I'm
had too.
not. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure how I feel. I need to watch a couple more games. The only game I have access to for this year on all 22 is Florida. And so
I had that too.
I need to go through the other ones. There's some from last year that I'd like to look at, but yeah, that's why I like Levis, and I think he has probably the highest like star potential, or at least the highest ceiling in this class. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, you think he has a higher ceiling than Anthony Richardson?
Actually, let me rephrase that. Like in terms of just total highest ceiling, he doesn't. But I think that his
Like
ceiling is a
potential.
little bit lower than Richardson, but the floor is a lot higher. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like
Yeah.
the expected value is the best out of there.
Yeah, I definitely think we saw Trayvon Walker rise up draft boards pretty quickly towards the end of the draft process. I feel like, and he ended up being the number one overall pick based off of athletic traits. And I think Will Levis could be a guy, maybe not, definitely not, I would say the number one overall pick, but he could definitely rise up from I think he would probably go right now somewhere between 15 and 20, and he could rise up to a top 10, maybe scratch the top 5 even. And I wouldn't be that surprised if he gets drafted above CJ Stroud. I'll say that right now. So we could definitely see some teams gain a lot of interest in Will Levis. And if he has a good combine too, I mean, that's a guy that I think some NFL GMs will definitely fall in love with. Another guy that has insane athletic traits, Anthony Richardson out of Florida. as a Florida fan, I've watched every single game that Anthony Richardson has played in, and I still don't really know if he's good or bad because he's probably the biggest mystery in the draft. And if you had if you had him on a team that probably needs if you had some starting quarterback that is maybe going to retire soon, maybe like the Bucks, or you could just put him in as a backup for the first few years of the season. I really think Richardson could be the best quarterback in the NFL, or 1A, 1B with Patrick Mahomes. I think it's that type of ceiling that some NFL teams might be willing to take the risk on because his floor is also not that great as well. What are your thoughts here on Anthony Richardson?
Richardson is not a guy that I would be picking in the first round right now. I think he's really raw, and I'm not 100% certain that declaring right now is the right choice because his floor really does scare me. He's someone that I do not trust at all to break down a defense pre-snap. And then once you get to the NFL level where you're seeing a lot more like disguised coverages or like blitz packages that are a little bit harder to pick up on, he's not someone who really strikes me as like this guy is going to figure it out in that sense. But the athletic traits absolutely jump off the screen. He has the highest, definitely the highest just pure ceiling out of this class, where it's like if he hits his total, literally just his total ceiling, it is the best out of this class and one of the best in the league. He said potential 1A, 1B with Mahomes. It's just that his floor is really, really scary right now. So I've got a second round grade on Richardson right now. I think he is worth the day 2 flyer because he really could be good, and under the right coaching staff members, under the right offensive line, there is development to be had. He's going to sit for minimum 1 year before he's good. I don't think that this is someone that you plug into an NFL lineup right away. I think you sit him behind, kind of like what you said, sit him behind a quality starter, like some kind of journeyman. Let him learn. He needs to get better at the mental side of the game. But then he could be really, really good by the time that he is in his 3rd or 4th year in the league for sure. It's just I don't know how likely I find that right now.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the biggest mysteries. If you had to guess right now, if he ran the 40-yard dash at the combine, what do you think he would run?
I bet. Let me think, because
would it be the fastest
Fields ran like a
ever?
4.3, I think. Fields ran like a 4.3, 5 or something like that.
Was he the fastest ever?
He might. He didn't run it at the combine. He only ran it at his pro day, I think. I can look this up.
Michael Vick at 4.33 is the fastest ever.
4.33. So I think he'd be right around there. I think it'd be maybe even a little bit faster. I'm not quite sure that we're cracking the 4.2s just yet. But I think I could definitely see a 4.32, 4.31. But I bet right around that Michael Vick range because he is an incredible runner. And then you add in that arm talent to go with it. He could be so special.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. He's definitely one of the biggest, probably most interesting prospects to watch during this draft process, and to hear what NFL GMs and NFL teams will think about him. It's definitely a big question. I also want to go back to your point about him. He shouldn't have declared. I agree with that. I might be a little bit biased because I'm a Florida fan, but I don't think he is at the point. There's so many things that need to go right for him to reach that ceiling. I'm not sure if all those things are going to hit. He has to have that great coaching staff. He's going to have to be on a team that has a solid starter for the next year or two, but not good enough so that he just doesn't play at all. And then you have to get some things. You have to have a good coaching staff so that they don't get fired. And then he has to start all over again. And then you got to play him at some point within those 4 or 5 years, or see enough of him if you want to maybe take a chance on him as your franchise guy. So then that brings us to the last guy on this list that I have here, Hendon Hooker, out of Tennessee. Now, coming at one point this season, this college football season, he was the Heisman favorite. And I will say I think he got snubbed not going to New York. Do you think he should have gotten a trip to New York?
I am, because like you said, he was the favorite at one point. How many he missed what, the last like 5 games or something like that
2.
with
It was
Tennessee?
like
Oh,
2.
he missed 2. Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't
2
realize
or 3.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, then yeah, maybe because there were definitely some guys who didn't belong there. Like I did
Mhm.
not think that Stetson Bennett
Oh,
had
yes.
any reason, had
Those
any business
34
being in the Heisman
floaters. Oh
race.
my god.
I don't think Max Duggan had any business being in the Heisman race. Hendon Hooker bid would at least, yeah, I agree. I do agree with that
Yeah.
because I thought he missed a lot more games than he did. I didn't realize it was only
No, yeah,
2.
it was just like the
But yeah, I do think he should have been a candidate.
Yeah, I think it was like 2 full games, and then that 1 game where he tore his ACL, he missed like half of it. So, or
Hmm.
it was like maybe a quarter. But I mean, this guy, age is definitely a factor with him. He's 26. He has a torn ACL right now. He probably won't be ready until mid season next year. So he'll be 27 and a half, going on 28 at the time when he's probably fully healthy. How much do you think NFL GMs take into account when they look at Hendon Hooker's age right here?
I think it is a pretty big deal because, like, I think he and Richardson were pretty
Mhm.
similar in terms of their draft prospect. Like, they were similar level prospects at one point. And the thing is like Richardson is a little bit more toolsy, but Hooker certainly has that aspect. He's
Yeah,
Hooker's a little bit smarter right now. It's just the thing is like he's still so raw, and Richardson is I think 5 years younger. I think Richardson's 21,
he gets
20.
21, and then Hooker's 26.
Right, right.
So,
Hooker's like that's the thing. Like if they're on the same level, you're gonna go with the guy that's 5 years younger.
mhm,
And when you add in the fact that like he tore his ACL and won't be doing anything this season, I don't think he gets drafted. I bet he's someone
yeah,
who's like the most highly renowned undrafted free agent around, where teams really want to bring him into like their practice squad or just get him into training camp to see like what does this guy have, and then hope that he makes the roster because there's just the floor is just too low to spend
mhm,
capital on it. Where quarterback is not the only hole that most teams are trying to fill. And I think when you get into the back end of that draft, teams are looking for depth in other areas. So I don't think I feel very great about Hendon Hooker's NFL career right now, but I could certainly see him like making the team as a third string or something like that, or
mhm,
like making someone's practice squad. That's where I think he'll go, but
yeah.
I'm not 100% sure that teams are really looking to take that much of a risk on a guy.
Yeah, that was my next question actually. Is he draftable to any NFL team? And I think personally, I would still even pick him up in the 7th round just because there's so many questions and you're taking the chance because there's going to be a lot of teams I feel that will put in that will call up Hendon Hooker and see if he wants to join the practice squad, and then it's up to him who he chooses. So I would take him in like the back end of the 7th, like one of the last picks of the draft, because again, I don't think he is worth a lot. And we talked about the quarterback position being pretty valuable, but with him, his age, he's going to be like 31, 32 when his rookie no, I'm messing that up. He's like going to be like 30, 31 when his rookie contract ends. That's that's a little bit too much. That's a little too old for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your thoughts on just like older quarterbacks in general that are entering the draft? Do you think, as I feel that might be more and more common with the transfer portal and stuff, we saw a lot of guys enter the transfer portal that were draft eligible this year. Yeah, what are your thoughts on it? Because we've seen some quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers go until their late 30s. So,
Yeah, I don't mind if a quarterback is old if it's someone who's like a nuanced game manager. But if it's someone like Hendon Hooker who's like really toolsy and relies on his legs and his like really great athleticism, I'm not as big of a fan of it because it's something that's going to decrease with age quite a bit.
yeah.
Whereas like if you can really master the mental side and be like a very good pro ready type of quarterback, I'm
Mhm.
not too worried about it because that's not something that's really going to decrease. Like your cognitive ability is not going to be decreasing when you turn
Yep.
30, 32, or whatever. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of how I feel. But if I am going in the first round, I would really like my quarterback to be like 23 tops, unless they are just like otherworldly.
Yeah.
But if I'm picking a quarterback early, I want him to be really young. But if it's some like back end pro
Mhm.
ready type guy, I'm not too worried about it.
Okay, okay. All right. So yeah, that's pretty much the five guys. I know you're a Seahawks fan. You've got Geno right now who's playing pretty solid, but would you want to take any of these guys or any other quarterbacks in this class at some point?
I would not be surprised if we took like if Richardson is a faller, if he falls to later day 2, early day 3, which I don't think he will.
Yeah.
But if for some reason he does, I would not mind picking him. But right now, I am all in on Geno Smith, and that's a whole other conversation. I could talk about that for a really long time. But I think Geno Smith should be extended for 2 to 3 more years. And then if we really want some like total project guy where it's like the athleticism is clearly there,
Mhm.
not 100% sure how well that they are going to be plugged into an NFL offense immediately. I would not mind one of those guys, but right now I'm committed to Geno.
All right. That's good to know. All right. That's pretty much gonna do it. Where can people find you on social media?
So I am at JPOWNFL, JPOWNFL on YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Go check out the new YouTube video. We
Yeah.
had one on Jalen Carter and Will Anderson, and I think I'm gonna do another one pretty soon on actually about this about the I'm gonna do one on Stroud, Levis, and Bryce Young once I can actually like get a little bit deeper into their film and break it down. That's what I want to do next. But yeah, JPOWNFL on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube.
All right, sounds good. Go follow him there, and that's pretty much going to do it for this week's episode. See you guys in the next one. Peace.